I first met Amrita not in a coffee shop or over a Zoom call, but in her photographs. Before we ever spoke, I felt like I already knew something of her. Through these photographs, I caught a glimpse of how she looked at the world, what she paid attention to, what she decided to make important. Welcome to The Brown Box, a podcast where we amplify the lives and voices of brown women here in Singapore. Today's guest is Amrita Chandradas, a documentary photographer, a photojournalist, and a storyteller who moves through the world with equal parts tenderness and truth. This conversation with Amrita, it's not just a conversation about photography. It's a conversation about time and the power of photography to play with time, to hold a moment still, to give permanence to what might otherwise disappear. But most importantly, it's about telling the truth in a world that often prefers to look the other way. This is Amrita's story, but maybe in so many ways, it's all of ours too.
I think I was a really good girl, really listened to Amma and Appa. But at the same time, actually, most of the time I would listen to them. But I was very curious. Yeah, I was a very curious kid. And actually there were times they would tell me not to do something and I would do it. But it was like the extreme. My first memory was my mom was like, don't touch fire. Don't touch the stove because she cooks a lot. She's this amazing cook. But I was fascinated by the color of the flame that I was just like, I just really need to go out and touch it. Then I understood why she told me not to do that. They are really lovely parents, but when they were younger, they were very protective of me. I felt like the only people I could play with was my cousins. And I'm happy that I had my cousins because my older sister and I, we have a 6-year age gap. So at that time, it was a big difference compared to now. So I kind of had to imagine and create my own world within the space of my home because they were just so protective about me going down. Oh, I might fall. Or if I swim, I'm going to drown. They were just really scared about everything. And I understand them, but it was frustrating. And so what I think I did was I turned to books, I turned to what was enjoyable and for them they felt was safe, but in a way it worked out. So it was a lot of artwork and just observing the surroundings, watching a lot of films. When I went to school, that was a different thing. I was very playful and I have friends from childhood who are still my friends until today. But yeah, I think Amrita as a child, she was very curious. Not so talkative, but if I was comfortable, I would be talkative with you. And just always a dreamer. I think I still am a dreamer. Old habits die hard.
I love a dreamer. They're a dying breed. Just like Amrita, the dreamer in me was born from boredom. The kind of boredom that doesn't really exist anymore. Unlike kids today with calendars packed weeks in advance, we were left to figure things out on our own. I asked Amrita about her family.
For my father's side, I have a clear record. So I'm the 5th generation Tamil. I'm very lucky to know which generation I'm at, only because we have a lot of photographs in the family that goes all the way back to my grandfather in Singapore. My dad's mother is Tamil, but from Ipoh. So that's a totally different story, which I need to go and find out. Mother side, we don't know. I suspect also several generations. My mom's father is from Tanjavur, India. So he directly came and then he met my grandmother and they got married and things. So mom's side is a bit hazy, but dad's side is a little bit more clear. Father is a very interesting man. He is a brilliant artist. So he could draw someone's portrait within seconds. He's very observant, very talkative. He is very into music, very into anything that is associated with the arts, be it visual or performing arts, he's that person. And he has so much of knowledge. So he reads all sorts of books. And I think that's also where I got my reading from. And he shares that knowledge, which I think it's really important. And I think that got me more curious, I feel. He worked as an infographic journalist for 40-something years of his life. He first started with Herald. I think New Nation, then Herald, and then Straits Times. And I think it was amazing to combine arts with technology. And then he did a lot of reporting as well on the side.
I searched for information about Amrita's father online, curious to find the infographics he once created. And I discovered to my amazement, archived in the National Library, over 1,500 illustrations credited to him. I'm so impressed, but there's something else about his job that stays with me. It feels like it bridges the gap between being creative for its own sake and using creativity to make sense of the world. I see this as the starting point, the beginning of a thread that Amrita would keep pulling at, weaving it slowly into her life's work. Using creativity to understand the world.
My mom is actually also creative. She's very good in cooking, culinary arts. She's also into reading. She used to work for an import-export firm, and she was very good in organizing and things like that. And then she took a break after me and my sister was born, and she was a librarian for the National Library. Yeah. So it's a really lovely combination. And it was amazing because I loved the library and I used to go and spy on her when she was working and try to talk to her, let Amma do work. But I remember, National Library, the main one, and she was also in the Esplanade Library too. So that was lovely. I loved going to study in the Esplanade Library. I think she also liked it if I came to study there so she could keep an eye on me. But she joined back and then she was there for quite a while. And then she retired, I think, when me and my sister was a lot older.
Is it just me? Or is there something deeply nostalgic about libraries? Because even now when I walk into one, I feel it. That sense of possibility, rows and rows of books, each shelf, each spine, a doorway into another world, a place where boredom comes to die. I'm always curious about the books people grew up with, including the books their parents read.
My dad read a lot of autobiographical books, to sci-fi, to literature. My mom read more of romantic novels, which I also like that balance. But mostly this, sci-fi, autobiographical novels, philosophy as well. But I think my father got all of that from my grandfather. So I never met my father's father because he died when I think my dad was about 10 or 11 years old and he was 50. So I got to know my grandfather through the books he read.
I love that idea that sometimes stories are all we have to bridge the distance between generations. My own mother read romance novels. She always had a small bookshelf by her bed, dog-eared paperbacks stacked 2 rows deep, and most afternoons you'd find her reading. And then at some point I found the other books, the slightly more raunchy ones, carefully hidden between her saris, safely out of sight from her 2 daughters. Naturally, I snuck a few out and read them, and not so much because I was genuinely interested at that age, but simply because they were hidden. And anything hidden always feels like it must be worth discovering. But back then, much like Amrita, my own reading habits were pretty tame.
I started off just as any other kid would read, Enid Blyton books, all those children's imaginative stories, which I think was good because it paints the imagination even further. But I think when I was probably primary 5 or primary 6, that means I was 11 or 12 years old, I was starting to read books which was a little bit more, a bit more adult. So I remember there was a book I picked up which was about the life of Buddha, but it was very let's just say literature. Yeah, the way it was written and everything. And I was like, oh my God, this is really difficult. But I was very intrigued, and my dad supported me. He said, take your time to read it. You don't have to understand everything in one day. And maybe what you read today, you might not understand it, but maybe 3 or 4 years down the road, you're going to understand it. And he was right. So there was a lot of philosophical stuff that was picked up from there. Yeah, I would say more adult books. And I'm very glad that they brought that into that house, because it's something which I still enjoy doing. Actually, in fact, I have a book in my bag now.
Books shaped my life too. I didn't have a father who was like Amrita's, someone to guide me, to explain the world, but I had authors. I had their words. I asked Amrita how she first discovered photography.
My first experience with photography, again, circles back to my dad. So besides being this amazing artist, he loved taking photographs. He still does. And he would obsessively document every single thing. So I remember from a small kid, I could see this device right in my face. And, oh, look here, or pose with this flower. Sometimes it just get too much, especially if we're just going to a restaurant to eat. He'll document every single food. He'll make us pose. And then at the end of it, you can see our faces in the photographs. Okay, this needs to stop. But he just brought it everywhere with him. He would always have that camera bag, this like sling camera bag, which he still has it. I didn't realize that this was going to be a part of my life, a very big part of my life later on. It never hit me that one day it will be my profession. I enjoyed hearing the clicks. He started with film photography, so we wouldn't know what's going to happen with those images. And he'll go to the lab, he'll send it to somewhere in Bras Basah. And that was really nice, because unlike digital where you get images right away, you had to wait. So we have piles and piles of images that has followed us from childhood to like primary school to teenagehood to adult. So actually now I appreciate it, because there were so many beautiful moments that he has taken. Some of it was actually quite sad to look at, because I think on my dad's side, I can say this very openly, we are not very close. And we used to be, but there's just so much of trauma that has happened, maybe unspoken issues that have not been resolved, that is really sad that we are not as close as we should be. So when we look back at those moments of when we used to get together and then now that doesn't happen anymore, it feels a bit sad. So you look back at it with a lot of fondness.
And here I find the beginnings of another thread that runs through Amrita's work. The deep belief in the power of photographs to catch a moment, to hold that moment, to let it stay just a little bit longer. Before we go any further, there's a little story about her father I have to tell you. It doesn't quite fit neatly into this narrative, but there's no way I'm leaving it out.
Because he was such a creative person, we used to go out a lot when I was a kid. He would drag me to like different bookstores and different places to listen to music. So actually he listens to a lot of electronic music. He still does. So when people ask me, when did you first learn to rave? It was actually with my father in our house. Like blasted until the grills of our window will be shaking. He never treated me like a child. I think the only time when they treated me like a child is when I wanted to go out by myself. But when I was with him, he'd be like, come on, listen. And he exposed me to such amazing music from that age.
Don't you just love that story? A little Amrita, wild curly hair flying, raving with her father in their HDB flat. Loud enough for the metal window grills to shake. Loud enough to turn their flat into their very own nightclub. Wild, messy, joyful, completely theirs.
But anyway, so when we are going to all these places, he would tell me, oh, look at that pattern, or look at that color, or look at that plant, or look at how that person is sitting down, not in a mocking way, but like in a way where it's so beautiful in the light. It really complements them, the shadows, training me to be observant of my surroundings. And that's what photography is about. Photography is not just going out there and making the clicks. You really need to understand and respect the environment that you're in before you make those images. Fall in love with the space. So yeah, he pretty much trained me from that young age.
To be clear, he wasn't training Amrita to be a photographer. This wasn't about preparing her for a profession. It was about sharing a way of seeing the world. Amrita had her own choices to make, and like most of us, especially when we're young, she stumbled her way through them, tripping between one thing and the next, following what felt right for a while, until it didn't.
I think in my heart, I knew it was going to be something creative. It had to be something out of the box. Maybe a vet. And then as time went along, I was like, oh, maybe I'll be a teacher. And then after that, I was like a zoologist. It just changed.
There was one particular potential path that stood out, one that could have shaped her life in a completely different way. This time, it wasn't her father's influence. It was her mother's.
I was in secondary school. I was like, oh, I'm going to be a fashion designer. Oh, I love clothes and I love this. I was in love with patterns and fabric. And I think that's because of my mom. She's very good with fabrics and designs and in the way she dresses herself and she puts a sari on. I was very amazed every time when she had to get ready to go to the temple or to a wedding. So those colors stay in my mind.
Watching your mother get dressed up, now that's an image that really stays with you, right? Maybe it's because it's our first glimpse into the adult world, that unexpected transformation of the woman that you know as mum or amma into something more glamorous, a side of her that's not shown to you but is reserved only for the outside world. I asked Amrita what her mother wore, because like so many women, Indian women especially, what you choose to wear isn't just about clothes. It's about who you are and how you want the world to see you.
When she went out, she would wear Western attire. So some very pretty blouse, or she'd wear very long skirts, velvety skirts with like very loud rose prints on them, which I didn't really observe with other parents. She was very stylish. She was wearing jumpsuits like me. I actually have some of her tops, which I actually wear now, like batik tops. And then when she did wear a sari, it was all sorts, like silk, pattu sari, to just cotton as well. She had a very good sense of fashion, accessories as well. I think like earrings. I think she's a very stylish woman. She's someone who is very comfortable in her own skin. And I really like that. I really admire that about her.
Earlier in the conversation, Amrita made me pause when she referred to her mother as a culinary artist. Of course, I've heard people appreciate their mother's cooking many, many times. It's practically a love language in itself. But there's something about that phrase, culinary artist, that stayed with me. So I asked her to share more.
Oh my God, her food is amazing. She has been cooking since the age of 11 years old. My grandmother was also a very good cook. So I think she got it from there. You can see it from their hands. There's just something about it, like very short and stubby fingers, but they could knit through things really well. My favorite by her is actually takali rasam, that means tomato rasam. And she does it in the traditional way. It's not like instant. Everything is from scratch. And I asked her to explain it to me. And I was like, what? There's so many steps? I didn't realize, but she does it so quick. She could cook like 3 dishes at a go. Very good chicken perotal, like koli perotal. I don't know how to say that in English. Chicken something. Ikan bilis sambal, which is anchovies sambal. Also mutton curry. She could be doing mutton curry and then she could turn it into a soup on the side. And then she'll do some other salad thing and she'll finish that all within 1 hour. So it's like, I take so long to just make one dish. But because of her, I enjoy taste so much. And like, when I go to Europe, after a while, I'm like, oh my God, I need the Tamil food. I need that proper like spice to kick in.
And now I understand why I was so struck by Amrita's choice of words, culinary artist. Because what she's describing here, these are the daily chores of a housewife, the everyday labor of feeding a family. Yes, maybe she was a better cook than others. Maybe her food stood out, but still, these are the things women are expected to do quietly, without fuss, without recognition. And yet, by calling her mother a culinary artist, by noticing her skill, by remembering how people would call and ask for her recipes, Amrita's doing something really powerful. She's taken what so many would see just as housework and elevated it to an art. She's allowed her mother to be an artist.
I think food was a way of showing love to her family and her friends. And she still does that. I think it's a way to bring us together. When she sees you enjoying the food, she feels really happy. Even now, when she goes to see her friend, she'll make something and she'll bring it over and they will be having lunch somewhere else, but she'll say, this is for you, like for dinner. And she's that kind of person.
I love these nostalgic meanderings, but I'm also conscious of bringing Amrita's story back to her journey, to how she became a photographer. Before we get into that, there's something else she wants to talk about, and I'm so glad she brings it up, because this feels really important.
I was an average kid in school, but I think I really struggled with the exams, definitely. As much as I love my parents, there was a lot of pressure on education, not just in my family, but amongst all my cousins. And I don't blame them because I think that's what was taught to them. And what happened was I went into the express stream, and then I think when I was in Sec 3, I couldn't cope. I really could not cope. That was also the year my grandmother passed away, my first experience with death. And it was very visceral, and it really blew my mind how everything happened. I was very close to her. It was the grandmother, my mom's mom, that we all grew up with. And she died at the age of 67, which actually, 67, she could have gone on longer, but she died of a heart attack, basically. So a lot of that happened, and I think my mom was going through menopause as well. So at that time, actually, we couldn't get along with each other. There was just so much. I couldn't cope. And what happened at the end was I repeated my Sec 3. That is a really big thing. There were 10 of us from that class who repeated. 10. And we were called repeats. It was really funny. No, at that time it wasn't. Now I'm just like, what the hell? Oh my God, it was like the world ended for me. I didn't tell my parents. I was just prolonging it because I knew it was going to be terrible. There's this thing, right, in our South Asian community, or what would the other person think? It's so prevalent in every family. And I knew this is going to go so bad because this is going to go with my relatives. I'm going to be seen in a certain way. I would have brought shame to the house. It was terrible. And when my mom came, she was furious. And I don't blame her for that because A, she didn't know. B, what do I do? How do we handle this? It was a lot of emotions. Now I look back and I'm just like, it shouldn't be that way. No amount of pressure should be placed on a child like this at the age of 15 years old. It was crazy. Then it was my father who had my back. And he was like, take your time. And when he said that, that hit me differently. He said, don't let anyone else say otherwise to you.
Take your time. Take your time. It's such a small phrase, but maybe it's one all of us, especially children, need to hear a little more often. Permission to go slow, to figure things out on your own time, to stumble a little, to wander a little, to not have it all worked out all the time. Wouldn't that be a gift?
I was in this class and yeah, we were called the repeats and things. But in that class, the kids were actually very accepting. The repeats was probably the labels that was given to us by the teachers. They will just call us, the repeats. Okay, where are you? And all 10 of us will put our hands up.
The repeats. Small words with jagged edges. Labels. A reminder that you didn't quite keep up. That you didn't quite make it. Being called a repeat. It couldn't have made things any easier. Here's a little story that shows just how deeply these things can land on a child in ways that adults might not ever imagine.
I remember my best friend I've grown up with since the age of 5 years old. So this 30 years of friendship. We followed the same school from kindergarten, primary, secondary. When I found out I was going to repeat, I could see the look in her face, and it wasn't disappointment in me or anything like that, but she was just so scared what is going to happen when my parents find out. We used to be right next to each other. And I think the teacher separated us into different classes because we were so talkative. But I remember when I had to repeat, her row moved and people used to give us space so that we could actually see each other and talk to one another. So that now I'm remembering all of that.
This scene stays with me. Amrita separated from her friend, trying to catch a glimpse of her. And I love how the kids respond. Leaning forward, leaning back, just enough to give Amrita and her friend a clear line of sight. I asked Amrita what happened next, and she has a very funny story to share.
I was grounded for a really long time. They changed tuition teachers for me, and it was a super strict tuition teacher. His name was Rajit. It's very funny because his son is actually a very famous rapper in Singapore, Yung Raja.
No.
So
I think someone else is rebelling.
Rajit sir was actually...
Yes, you got that right. Amrita's tuition teacher was the father of Yung Raja. That's kind of wild when you think about it. The man who spent his days drilling kids in maths raised a son who's known most famously for beats and hip-hop swagger.
Ajit sir was actually, he was strict, but he was amazing. I can see why Yung Raja is the way he is because he was a very creative person as well. I remember a butterfly flew in and he said, let's pause and admire what the universe has given us. He's that kind of person. So I can see why Yung Raja is like this. And Yung Raja's sister taught me Tamil and she rode a Harley Davidson in her shalwar kameez. So she's like super cool. That whole family is really cool. So I can see why he is the way he is because they're like brilliant. They're really brilliant.
I stand completely and totally corrected, guilty of falling into the very cliches that we're trying so hard to avoid on this podcast. Yung Raja wasn't rebelling. He wasn't some kid in need of discipline. In fact, he's spoken often about his love for his roots, and I'll quote him here because it's just said so beautifully. It was a constant switching of worlds for me, the two worlds mainly being the traditional South Indian one at home and the multicultural Singaporean one I got to experience as soon as I left home. My family gave me plenty of space to understand and contextualize these two distinctly different and separate worlds of influence. When I researched this, when I read this, a part of me wondered, maybe Amrita's father knew this all along. Maybe he knew exactly what he was doing, showing her what so many of us learn slowly, that art and hard work and discipline don't have to sit on opposite sides. They can sit together side by side. We move forward with Amrita's story. That year was all about studies, strict routines, long hours, constant pressure. She did well enough, even coming second in class, which helped ease things a little bit at home. But the stress never really left her, and she still remembers her art entrance exam. The nerves building up so much that she threw up halfway through. They had to move her desk outside so she could finish. This experience left her with one clear thought. She never wanted to feel that way again, and she didn't want to live a life built around exams and grades.
Now I teach photography besides a photographer as well. I remember the youngest person in the class was a kid who just finished his PSLE, which is at 12 years old. And he got his results and I think he wanted to go to one of the top schools, but I think the aggregate score was not enough to get into that top school or something like that. And it was to some other school, which was an equally like good school. He was disappointed. He was just like, oh, I'm so sad. I didn't get into that school. My whole future. He was so devastated. But what I found, which was so beautiful, was not only me, but all the other women who were much more older in the class. He was the only boy, the youngest one. They came to him and they said, you will forget about this. This doesn't matter at all in your life. You're 12 years old. You need to enjoy your life. And I'm telling you this because we are all grown-ups. It doesn't matter what school you've gone to. It doesn't matter. This is just a very small part of your life. So don't let that affect you. It shouldn't. And you should be enjoying your space as a teenager. This is all going to be secondary. It's the experiences that you have with your friends and the things that you will explore and discover, which will sit in your mind a lot more longer than the school that you've been to. And I was so happy to see that now.
I'm so happy that Amrita had her full circle moment. The more I talk to people, the more I realize how these sharp edges of our childhood, they can disappear for a while, but then they will reappear years later, scratching at us when we least expect it. And this pressure to succeed in school is almost a part of the Singapore brand. But what Amrita and her success can remind us of is that every child is different. And hard work, yes, it matters, but the pressure, that we could probably do without. But of course, this was the pressure of academics. What about identity? What about race? What about being Indian in these spaces? I asked Amrita how she navigated all of this.
I think in primary and secondary school, I did feel the need to really shine, not say shine, or to put my feet down and be like, yeah, I'm a Tamil, I'm going to be here to occupy the space. But even then, I don't think it was a firm sort of stance at all. I don't think I really realized what the repercussions were or what it was like growing up in primary and secondary school and in these spaces where you have teachers making you aware of your identity in a very uncomfortable way, until maybe I actually left the country, to be honest. So I moved to England just to give people a bit more context. I think it's just the ability to talk about race openly. I was just shocked when I went there. I was like, wow, you can talk about it. It took my very good friend and my flatmate, Kadia, who comes from a mixed background where her mother is black and her father is white, to then sit down and tell me that, hey, what you went through were like microaggressions. I've had a friend from Singapore who went to England and was complaining of racism or being reminded of who she is or being put into a certain place or into a certain box. And then it's when my flatmate turned to me and she said, what she's going through right now is exactly what you've been going through all your life in Singapore. And that's when I turned and I was like, oh my God. It took me a long time to realize that. Okay, so that's the realization part. But it's really the open conversations that I managed to have. And it's a joke because it's in a country where it colonized 3/4 of the world or more. But you could really express yourself and you don't need to fit into a certain box. And you're not reminded that you are in this certain box. Nobody's going to judge you. It was pretty much through the conversations with people who are already very aware of their own identities. So for me, it was through that pathway. Yeah, for me, it was really like a lot of things was buried inside me. It's just a sense of just being comfortable in your own skin. So for example, like I have curly hair, right? You're in school and you're made fun of and it's seen to be unruly, untidy, unkempt, not fit. So what do? We oil it, we pin it down, we plait it, we pull it, and we try to fit in. And also at a brief point of time, I actually straightened my hair to fit into a box. And now I think back, why the hell did I do that? I straightened it so that I could fit, to be accepted. It's even through the topic of hair.
I share with Amrita my own experiences in Singapore with my short curly hair, walking into salons and having the hairdresser hold up my hair with a barely disguised look of disdain. Slowly I realized this was about more than just hair, because in Singapore, where the Chinese majority often means straight hair is the norm, everything else quietly becomes bad hair. Hair that's difficult, hair that doesn't belong.
Oh, yeah, no, I've experienced that so many times that I stopped going and I was like, I'm going to cut my own hair. I mean, you're in a hair salon, you can see their expressions through the mirror and then that sits in your mind. But it's just even things that they just say, oh, Maggi mee goreng, instant packet noodles and things like that. Yeah, you laugh about it, but you're automatically made to be different. Oh, your eyes are so big. Oh, you're very pretty for an Indian. Oh, your skin color as well. Oh, I've turned off the lights, I cannot see you. What does that mean? And I'm the kind of person who takes a while to process. I need to think for a while and then process it. I'm not very good in expressing with words right away. That's why I think I do photography. So sometimes I'll process it. I'm like, oh, damn it. This is what I should have said or blah, blah, blah. Or to process exactly what was the intention of that sentence. It can be very loaded. Or even speaking Tamil. they'll make it sound like a rubbish language. And I believed them. At that age, I believed them and I shied away from it. Now I don't. I mean, I don't speak amazing Tamil, but whenever I can, I will. I think it's such a beautiful language and that should not have happened. I did not grow up feeling beautiful as a kid because of all of these things that has happened. Now I do, but back then I did not feel that.
I'm glad you feel beautiful now, because you are.
Yeah, thank you. Some days I still struggle, but I do.
I share with Amrita a memory from when I was in hostel. It was a very global international school, lots of kids from lots of places. But for a long time, we were the only Indian family there, me and my sister. And I don't remember thinking too much about my skin color until another Indian girl joined. She was North Indian, and she was so much fairer than me. And just like that, I noticed. I remember going back to the hostel that evening, taking an extra long bath, scrubbing my skin, wondering if maybe, just maybe, some of the darkness would wash away. Because if we were both Indian, why was she fair and I was dark? And somehow in my young mind, it felt simple. Fair was better than dark.
I think it's also rooted within our community for sure. It's things like when a baby is born, oh, is she fair? Who cares? As long as the baby is healthy, there's this obsession with it in our community that has travelled here as well. And even in the UK too, that obsession is also there within the Indian community for sure. To be fair is to be beautiful. I think it comes through conversations with the elders. Subconsciously, it's in your mind. Then through books, only speaking it from like a Tamil Hindu perspective, right? So there were books I picked up, right? And it was very interesting. All the gods are fair, but the demons are dark. Imagine a kid reading that. So, of course, this is why from a young age, all these messages are stuck in your head that you feel like to be beautiful, you have to be fair. Still happens. Still hear it in conversations with older people.
Yeah, 100%. I think they coded it a little bit. You're looking a bit tired.
Yeah. Why you look like that? It becomes so many more shades darker. You look sick. Yeah, that's true.
Wait, no, it's not tired, dull.
Dull,
You're
correct. Dull.
dull.
Exactly.
If you've ever had the word dull used on you, you'll understand my passionate interruptions. Dull is a big word, a word broad enough to carry many insults on its back. Dull in presence, not shining, not being the happy, smiling version of yourself that people expect. And of course, dull skin, not just dark, but not glowing, not fresh, missing something, lacking something. I really hate that word. But let's jump back into Amrita's journey. In LaSalle, Amrita found herself drawn to arts management, the process of managing artists and working behind the scenes. It felt like a space where she might belong. One of the best parts of that time was the internships. LaSalle connected students to the real art world, festivals, performances, visual arts. And she got to work backstage at several events. But the real turning point came when she interned in a production house, Free State Productions, run by Gozde from Turkey and Russell from Singapore. And what struck her most was how seriously everyone took photography, film photography.
Russell is a really amazing photographer himself. And he took this picture of a woman holding her son. It's a black and white image and it's set in the landscape in Istanbul. I think it was the Blue Mosque. There was this warm light just directly shining above it. And I just walked past it and I was like, who is she? What's going on? Is she really the mother of this kid? Why did he make that image? What happened? I felt suddenly so inspired to know who this person was. I don't think I actually sat down to have a conversation with Russell about that image because I wanted to keep that curiosity going. I went back home and I picked up a camera from the dry box, my dad's camera, and I joined a class. I didn't understand what the hell they were talking about because there was a lot of numbers. So I just took the camera with me and I really experimented for that whole year. It was also a time where, as a family, we started to travel more. So my dad was saying that, okay, I got the next couple more years. Let's travel more. He was amazing. He got us together and we went to all these different places. And I brought the camera. So I really had that privilege to do that. And I just kept taking photos. For parents who are super careful about everything, I was very surprised that he allowed me to handle his camera in that way. I was just taking pictures and I was enjoying it, really enjoying the sound of the clicks and falling in love with the light and just photographing everything that I saw that was interesting. But I kept it to myself. I didn't really show the images to anyone. It's just for me, just to enjoy. After LaSalle was coming to an end and I had such an amazing time over there, I knew in my heart I need to get out of this country. I always wanted to leave. I always wanted to go. I set my mind, okay, I'm going to go to England and this is what's going to happen. I got into a course, Media and Cultural Studies at the London College of Communications. That was where I really realized my potential in photography. I worked at the studio and then I also worked as a wedding photographer, massive South Asian community, and in a lot of the Pakistani communities. When the guy and the girl is doing nikah, the guy would have a photographer, but not the girl. So I had a lot of Pakistani friends in school as well. And they were like, my sister's getting married. We've seen your pictures. We trust you. I said, are you sure? I've never done this before. But bless them. They were like, no, just go for it. I appreciate them for giving me that chance. It was my lecturer on the course who said that I should get into my master's in photojournalism and documentary photography, which I feel it's really important to mention because that changed my life completely. When I was starting off, I was doing very single images. I was very fixated in making beautiful images, but I still wasn't thinking much about the story. But subconsciously, the heart of it was to tell a story through the images. That lecturer was saying that you have a potential. He recognized it very cleverly. Your line is going to be photojournalism and documentary photography because of the way you're going around it. And I'm very glad that he was able to identify it. Dr. Jonathan Wright, that's his name. I was very scared because the people on the course was already shooting for major publications like New York Times, for the BBC. And I was like, who am I here on the course? I'm starting from scratch. How do you go beyond a single powerful image? How do you make a series of photographs to tell a story? How do you piece them together? It was so intense. Every week we had to photograph 3 stories. I can get a bit anxious to go out right away in a new environment and speak to new people. So it really forced me to get out of my shell and talk to people. It was great. It was fantastic because it really then allowed me to get access into the lives of people which otherwise I would not have gotten access to. And the people on the course were amazing. Those who were really experienced would actually, after class, help us out and tell us, like, okay, how do you edit? How do you sequence your work? Everybody was so cooperative and everyone came from different parts of the world, from India to Ecuador to Portugal to China. So we all came in together in this one space to express ourselves through photography. I was so lucky to be able to have that because when you go into the real life or in the industry, you don't have that anymore because photography is a very solitary job. You're on your own and you have to handle everything by yourself, even though you're meeting people and everything, but you're really on your own. That class, it changed everything for me from when I wanted to be in London to I need to leave London to tell the stories because the stories are not here, the stories are back home. And I have a responsibility to tell that and I want to tell that.
I love how after all that freedom, all that openness, all that creative expressiveness, Amrita still felt the pull to come back to Singapore, to return home. She felt a sense of responsibility to this place, to its people, its stories.
For my final year project, I did shoot a story in Singapore. It was amazing because there were so many things that I did not know about my own country, how the Singaporean landscape is evolving to accommodate a new population figure, because that was the year they announced that they want to increase the population to 6.9 million by 2030. What does that mean in a very tight, densely populated country? That moment, Bukit Brown Cemetery, which has so much of history, was going to be cleared away. And then there was the last kampung in Singapore, Kampung Bongkok, which is not cleared away, but you can see how the modern infrastructure is coming. And then other stories of migrants. I was very angry, all these changes. So my pictures also was really dark. It was very reflective of my state of mind when I was photographing it. But I think it was also the project that determined that, okay, there are a lot of stories to cover here in Singapore. And I think it's important that we come back to tell our stories.
You can see this project on Amrita's website. I've shared the link in the show notes. What strikes me most about this series is how all these different images, all these different lives are connected by one thing, space, or more precisely, the lack of it. There's an HDB block seen through the green of trees, almost like a concrete photobomber intruding on the frame. There are people moving quietly through the night, dwarfed by the looming edges of buildings. The project drifts into other stories, the lives of the migrants, the lives of the dead, all shaped by space, all limited by it, all struggling quietly with it. One image haunts me more than any other, the muddy, clay-smeared fingers of a grave digger, a quiet reminder that ultimately none of this matters.
Brought all these images, came back to London, and then I was like, oh my God, I had thousands of photos. It was so hard to sequence a topic which is so broad. And through the help of my friend Daphne Ang, who's this amazing Southeast Asian art historian, she understood, because she's another Singaporean, so she understood what the project was about, sat down with her and we broke it down to chapters, made a book out of it, and we had an exhibit at the end of it. The 6.9 project actually won an award from Magnum Photos. It was the top 30 under 30 documentary awards. That gave me a lot of confidence and kind of put me a little bit under the eyes of editors.
Her first ever paid photography assignment was part of a larger investigative story on sea slavery. She was sent to photograph a recruitment agency in Singapore's Chinatown, just one small piece of this larger system. But it was eye-opening to realize that this wasn't happening far away. It was happening right here in Singapore, and she didn't even know about it. This approach, using photography to look closely at her own country, would become a constant in Amrita's work. Like many creatives, Amrita has also had to figure out how to balance that work, the paid jobs that pay the bills, with the personal projects that speak to her heart.
I mean, you need to have paid projects to survive and everything. I think when you do personal projects, you have to do it because you feel a very strong need to tell the story. You're feeling emotional about it. If you're going to do it because, I think it's going to be cool. No. For me, I think the emotions are very important. How does it spark a certain feeling? Because you're going to be working with this for a very long time. And you also owe it to the people whom you're photographing. Because I feel in photography, there's a lot of taking and the giving aspect is not as much. And I think this is something which we need to recognize in the industry. So you have to be really sure you want to do this and you really feel strongly about it. If not, don't work on it. Don't do it. My first personal project was, of course, the 6.9 series. My second personal project was the project I did in Sri Lanka. And that it was a project and still is a project that makes me very angry and upset. My roots are from Tamil Nadu, not from Ilam. So I got to know Ilam Tamils when I was in the UK. My uncle was actually interpreting for asylum seekers from that conflict, or actually I would term it as a genocide. When I heard the stories, he told me, it blew my mind that the news was not covering this. Then I found out the second largest number of disappearances in the world comes from Sri Lanka, and they're mostly Ilam Tamils. I started to go to their protests on their remembrance days, and they had pictures of their loved ones who have gone missing or loved ones who have died. And actually, even before the UK, in Singapore, my father, who was drawing the maps, was telling me what was going on. This area got bombed, that area got bombed. There was a gathering at Hong Lim Park, and only 5 Singaporean-Tamils turned up. The rest were all migrant workers. These are literally our brothers and sisters who have died or have gone missing, and we've done nothing to help them they've been left alone completely. But they are the most resilient people I've ever met. I met all these activists who could not go to Sri Lanka to cover the stories because they were axed by the government. I held so many conversations with them, and I felt, okay, there was a lot of written pieces, but there were no images. No one was photographing it. Photography is just as powerful as writing. Together with writing, it's going to be a powerful component. I already had that need. Okay, we need to do it. We need to go forward. But I just didn't know when. Then there was a change in leadership in Sri Lanka. And my activist friends said that now if you want to go, you have to go now. Actually, there's a lot of things that I think I should have been a bit more careful. Like I should have done a bit of journalism training. I just went, packed my bag, went to Colombo, spent a few days there, and I took the train all the way up to Jaffna. People were curious, like, who am I? Who's this girl on her own? They were talking to me, but I couldn't tell people why I really was there. So I just say, I'm just here to do some temple visits.
Let's pause here and take a moment to understand this conflict. The Sri Lankan civil war lasted nearly 3 decades and claimed over 100,000 lives. It began as ethnic tension between the Sinhalese Buddhist majority and the Tamil Hindu minority, with the LTT fighting for an independent Tamil state. One of the most tragic aspects was the disappeared. The thousands of people, mainly Tamil fighters, who simply vanished. Families left without closure, without bodies to mourn, just emptiness and questions.
The stories I heard are stories that are in my mind until today. I specifically went to cover the story about the disappearances. I went thinking that people were actively looking for them, but actually all the offices were closed after the conflict. How am I going to photograph this? I put the camera away and I realized that the pictures are going to come through maybe later. Let me talk to them first. When I started to talk to them, and then that's when I realized that the stories are within their own homes because of a certain place which is tied to a certain memory. It's the things that their loved ones have left behind, images and photographs that are left behind. Women whose husbands have gone missing, but they still hold on to wearing the red potter, certain rituals where a woman is being widowed, then she has to remove the potter and all these things and blah, blah, blah. They're still wearing the tali and everything. No, I haven't seen my husband's body. Why should I remove this?
What Amrita is referring to here, the red potter, is the red dot that women wear on their forehead. The tali is the gold chain they wear around their neck, both to show that they are married. This is the equivalent of the wedding ring on the left hand in Western society. And when a woman is widowed, she must remove this red potter, remove the tali. I asked Amrita to tell me more about these disappeared men.
They passed a rule that if anybody is suspected of terrorism, because that's what they were deemed as, they can be taken away for questioning. So using that, there has been a lot of abuse that a lot of people have actually went missing who were not Tamil Tigers themselves. And then there were Tamil Tigers who surrendered at the end of the war. They were never to be found again. A lot of the missing people were put into camps. And if you had enough money, you could find and get them out. But if you did not, then you just did not know what was going to happen to them. As the years have gone on, there have been a lot of mass graves that have been found. I think a couple of years back, the Sri Lankan government was like, oh, all the missing people are declared to be dead without giving any whereabouts into their deaths and things like that. It was a very difficult topic to photograph, but I felt really strongly about it because my heart just goes out to the Ilam Tamil people who were caught in between, fighting for their right to live, fighting for their freedom. So that was my personal project. Very angry, very sad, very devastated. But what I feel is a drop in the ocean compared to what they feel.
I really encourage you to visit Amrita's website. The link is in the show notes. Here you can see these images for yourself. And trust me, they will stay with you as they've stayed with me. I still remember the photograph of a missing father's shirt, carefully pressed, waiting for the day the son will be big enough to wear it, and the image of a handkerchief, a comb, a tiny smudged photograph, everything that was left behind. A photograph of a woman, a scar, deep and dark, tracing the shape of the shrapnel that once tore through her skin. We now move on to an ongoing project of Amrita's, though I hesitate to even call it a project. It feels less like a project and more like a slow, patient documentation of life itself.
Tamils in Singapore. That was driven by so many different feelings. Driven by love, it's a love letter to the community. Driven by pain as well. Driven by sadness, driven by anger. So many emotions that come together to talk about the issues that we face. I grew up feeling like we were not represented much at all. I just feel like I couldn't look at the images of someone else from my community to draw inspiration or to be motivated by or to just be lost in. So that's one of the factors. Another one was I have photographed the stories of everyone else, but not the story of my own, my family, my community. And I think that's important. We're not just Tamils, we're Singaporean-Tamils. And I felt like there were not much images of us out there. And I felt, okay, somebody needs to start to do it. And I'm going to enjoy doing this. And I don't care however long it takes me. Then I guess there were issues that internally I wanted to talk about. Like, what is it like to be a Tamil woman and have certain restrictions imposed onto us or not. Difficult issues as well as the easy issues. Then, of course, the trauma. I think that was something I also wanted to talk about. I also just generally wanted to celebrate my friends and my family.
As of now, Amrita hasn't shared these photographs widely, but they've been shown in intimate, thoughtful, international exhibitions and publications. I asked her to share a few stories behind the images.
I photographed my mother, who's holding a sambrani to her face. So sambrani is like a camphor smoke which you show around the house, and she does it every Tuesday and Friday. And to me, you close your eyes and you smell it, it already brings you back to home no matter where you are at. I think that's a very powerful feeling. It's a practice which I feel I would continue in my own home as well. So there are some rituals I would love to continue, and there are some rituals I wouldn't want to continue. So for me, that smell reminds me of home. That smell reminds me of her. I think it's a common feeling which a lot of us Tamil Hindus have in a lot of other homes as well. I also know I had a student who was a Tamil Catholic, and she said they too also use the sambrani. So it's pretty much a staple for a lot of our homes. I also photographed an image of my friends taking flowers and throwing it at the screen when Rajini appears, Rajinikanth. I didn't know about this, but they were like, yeah, when he comes in the cinema, we'll take the flowers and we'll throw it. They were like, yeah, we're going to do it because he's our Taleva, he's the God in our lives. And that was really fun, how music and films and the music from films are such a big part of our culture. And at least for me, the radio is always on and it brings me back to a certain time.
There's no escaping Rajinikanth if you grow up in a Tamil household. Not in India, not in Singapore, not anywhere really. But I'll be honest, I often felt a little outside of all that hero worship. Theatres, for me, especially those screening Rajinikanth movies, never felt like spaces for women. They were loud public spaces for men to shout his punchlines, to whistle on his entrance, to try his stunts in real time. And yet, for all that, he really belonged just as much to women. Grandmothers, mothers, aunties, sisters, everyone cheering for his superstar persona, yes, but also for his kindness, his simplicity, his humility off screen. Which is why I just love this image, the one that Amrita captured of a young woman standing there in the theatre, throwing flowers at the screen with all the abandon that is still so often only reserved for men.
Then another pivotal image that came up was a picture of my auntie who passed away 2 years ago. She died at the age of 80 years old. But because she was not married, there was a lot of ridiculous rituals that we had to do. My father had to chop a banana tree so that would accompany her in the next life as a husband. I was like, why? When the person passed away also, it's not a peaceful thing. And I went to the sari shop to get saris for her. And the lady asked me, is she married or not married? I said, why does it matter if she's not married? Means what? She's not going to wear colourful saris? I was like, no, take the colourful sari. We're going to deck her in a colorful like sari. There was just all these rituals that I felt were just really unnecessary. Why is it an unmarried woman is seen to be not complete? That is something I strongly disagree with, and that comes up a lot in my work too. You can see it's so many different things: celebration to admiration to anger to sadness. These are some of the images that I've made, and there's many more, but each image is like a very different situation. So I do want to make a book out of it, or have an exhibit at some point. But I think I need to make a few more images and then release like one chapter. But I haven't started on any of that at the moment.
I asked Amrita to share some advice for young photographers out there.
You need to trust your work and trust the situation that you are in when you're photographing. Try not to wrestle too much with that. When you have to do paid publication work that can really occupy so much of your time, that the space to do personal work gets a lot more shorter because you're caught in this rat race of life of paying your rent, your food, and things like that. It's such a solitary job. So, of course, that pressure will always be there. You're going to start to feel the burnout and recognize that. Definitely recognize that. Try not to get there. Like last year, I was in Portugal. That's when I took the camera and I didn't shoot for anyone. I just said, I'm going to just take images and I'm going to do it in a way where I just feel happy. You need to have that. You need to have a break where you're not answering to anybody. In a way, also, you're not answering to yourself. You're just doing it because you just want to enjoy and be in that moment. You're just taking the images. You're re-reminding yourself like how you started photography. And I think that's important. Photography plays with time. So be in that moment and be present. The moment now is not the same as the moment like from before. It's different. We play with time where we are able to freeze a moment. We play with time where we immortalize a moment where someone can look back and relive that entire memory like 10 to 20 years ago. That's what I mean by playing with time. So the photograph you're looking at, you're already looking at the past. But the pictures you make is now, and then that has already gone. Photography is this magical tool which is able to freeze that and completely put it into a box that can become a memory for later on. Or it could be an archival material to be referred at. Or it could be a photograph to trigger a certain feeling as well. So we play with time literally through our settings, but emotionally as well, we do play with time. I think that's what photography is about.
Such a beautiful thought. And it's not just about freezing a moment. It's about choosing which moment to freeze. The lift of a leg, the turn of a head, the light catching someone's skin in a certain way. All of that is a choice. And there's a kind of magic and power in that, right? It's a power Amrita is deeply aware of. One she doesn't take lightly, often reflects on, and is always trying to use with care.
I just see it as more of a responsibility to tell the story right. You have all the power in the world to do, and that power is in your court. The balance of the photojournalist and the person whom you have photographed, the photojournalist has so much more power to frame how they want of the person and of that situation. I think we need to recognize that. We need to be responsible for the stories that we put out there. There is a lot of power. I recognize it. It's scary. It's humbling. But also at the same time, you have to be responsible. Very responsible, and find a way to give back as much as possible. Let's just say, for example, I've made a photograph of this artist in Jogja, and that was a recent thing I did. And they asked me, oh, can I have access to the photographs? I give it away. Why should I charge you for that? Because I do know photographers who have charged individuals who have asked for the images. I'm like, they've given you your time. How can you charge them for that? Unless it's a corporate company, it's completely different. But if it's individuals with real life stories and they're spending time with us, you cannot charge them. And then if it's a topic that you can raise awareness, what else can you do to pitch in to help? Do you truly care about what's going on over there? If you're going to cover a topic, try as much as possible to cover both sides of the story. try to make it as balanced as possible, or do your research. You owe it to the people whom you photographed. You owe it to the people whom you've interviewed. If someone is uncomfortable, do not take their photograph. Do not publish it. Ethics are so important. Photojournalism on the whole, it can be very sad because the kind of news it sells are very negative. Sort of, that's how people pick up the thing. So actually, I would like to work on something more happier as well. Let's see.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, in the future. Yeah.
Thank you so much. It's been absolutely fabulous.
Thank you. Thank you.
So articulate.
I've loved this conversation with Amrita. Through her and our conversation, I have found that tiny, ordinary moments become extraordinary simply because we choose to notice them. For Amrita, her father's maps drawn to explain the world to her, the books that shaped her childhood and mine, her mother's rasam simmering in the kitchen, sambrani curling through the room, and through her I realized that this is the real gift of photography, not just capturing a moment, but choosing which one stays. In Amrita's hands, storytelling, photography becomes an act of rebellion, a refusal to forget, a refusal to let go. It's her way of saying to herself, to her community, to the world, let this moment stay just a little longer. If you've enjoyed this conversation with me and Amrita, join us for the next episode of The Brown Box as we unpack another story of being brown and being a woman in Singapore. Until then, maybe pick up your phone, not to scroll, but to take a photo, to notice, to document, to freeze time. Because every photo we take is really just us saying, let this moment stay just a little longer.